people have asked me, gee whiz, you've written for film, you've written for TV, you've written for magazines, you've written everything. What would you tell a writer that wanted to do it all? I'd say, don't try to do it all. Do something, do it well. Once you've done something well, try something else. If you like it, try it, but, keep it up. But don't try to do everything because you won't be successful in any of it.
Hello, everyone. This is Ron Rowell, the host of 45 Forward, where our mission is to help make your second half of life even better than the first. On today's podcast, my guest is Bill Williams, a remarkable man whom I met through a good friend, Bonnie Graham, a fellow podcaster, also known as Radio Red, who does a show called Cool Conversations with Creatives, and Bill was a guest on her show, which I heard. Bill bills himself as a writer and editor, but that hardly describes him. And we could fill a lot of the show just going through your various steps. But let's just, give us a quick recap, and we'll go into various steps along the way. So let's, give us a little bit of a sense of, I know you had an, itinerant career. Your dad was in the military. So let's just give us a quick recap, and then we'll take deeper dives as we go along.
Starting, as you mentioned, I grew up as a military brat around the country. As a matter of fact, I went to something like 14 schools before I got out of high school.
Wow.
So I saw a lot of the country and had a lot of experiences. I originally thought, having grown up on Air Force bases, that I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer.
Wow.
And I applied for a job at what was then New Mexico A&M, because they had a program with White Sands Missile Range where he went to school for 6 months and went to work at the missile range for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get accepted, so I went to Texas Tech and enrolled in their engineering program. And after about a semester, I realized this is probably not a good career choice for me because I hate math.
Okay.
So I started traveling, moving around from major to major and to major. And after 5 years as an undergraduate, I was sitting in the union with a friend on the faculty, and he said, I was looking at one of your transcripts, and, you've got enough hours to graduate next semester. I jumped up and grabbed him by the collar and said, in what? He said, you take 3 more classes in speech and you can graduate as a speech major.
Wow.
And since the radio and television program was part of the speech department, I said, sure, I'm already doing managing the radio station, so why not? So I got a bachelor's in that, and then a master's in that, and then I went to the University of Texas, where I was on the faculty there and worked on a PhD. Never finished it, but worked on it. And wound up managing Four City Television Network, instructional television. We had 7 different universities that were all part of the program. And as a result of that, I was offered a job at Bowling Green State University and head of their instructional television department in a brand new television station. They were just putting it on the air. It was Channel 70, the highest in the nation. Fun thing, I had never heard of Bowling Green, Ohio. I thought it was going to Bowling Green, West Virginia, or Bowling Green, Kentucky. And had thought I'd always liked to live in the mountains, but Bowling Green, Ohio is as flat as where I'd been in West Texas. So I had 3 great years there and moved to Washington, D.C., where I set up my own business as a communications consultant. Did a lot of work for, everything from Carter administration up through the first Bush administration. Did all of President Reagan's slideshows for him, and had a lot of fun doing what I was doing. I was a registered lobbyist. I was head of the president of the Independent Media Producers Association. Got some bills passed to make life easier for TV and film producers working for the government. And then I became a father and thought, gee whiz, I never had a hometown. I thought my daughters would probably like to have a hometown, and Washington is not really a great local hometown.
Right.
And so my wife had family back in Ohio, and we moved back to Ohio, and I've been here ever since.
Wow.
But let's face it, there's not a lot of demand for TV producers in Northwest Ohio, so I decided to change careers and got into finance, something that I thought I was going to hate, but I did anyway. But turned out I liked it. Turned out I was good at it. So I've been doing that for the last 35 years.
Wow. Wow. Very interesting. Yeah. As, accidental careers filled with intention. once you figure out what's really going on. Yeah. So let's look a little bit more about just the communications aspect before you got into the finance. So you've seen a lot of changes over the years. I mean,
Goodness, yes.
And certainly, I think we both, you and I, certainly remember the days of, certainly typewriters. And when I was started in journalism, the first paragraph of the story was one page, one paragraph. You put it in there, and you had to make copies for different slots in the newsroom. So you used carbon paper,
Yes, yes.
And then I think you've mentioned to me before, remember, like days when you got called and you got a pager, and like, oh, now I got to find a phone booth, and
Got to find a quarter.
Got to find a quarter, right. So this, like your thought for the day. What are some of your random thoughts about, what you've seen in communications, and where do you think we're headed?
Well, I started in photography.
Okay.
Working for the university public relations office, and very soon wound up on the staff of the local newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we had to do all the developing and printing and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I wound up writing for a bunch of the professional photography magazines.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, Technical Photography, edited by a good friend of mine, I wound up doing entire issues of them.
Mm-hmm.
I did an entire issue on photography at the White House. I did an issue on photography at the Smithsonian. I did an issue on photography at NASA. All the different ways they used photography. When I finally got out of Washington and came back to Ohio, I got a call saying, "Hey, Bill, could you do a special issue for us on this new digital photography?"
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the reasons I got out of it. It was because I didn't want to have to change everything, new cameras, new equipment, and everything.
Right.
And I said, "Sure, I'll do an issue for you." And about 3 weeks later, I called him up and said, "Dave, you're going to have to find somebody else to do this for you, because I've been out of it for 6 months, and I'm at the point where I don't even know the right questions to ask anymore." That's how much it's changed. Who would have ever thought Kodak would have been out of business?
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That was stunning, and I had a good friend from college who, just went out and he was I think he was a philosophy major, but he ended up saying, creating his own commercial photography business. And then all of a sudden, digital photography, and then people felt like, hey, what do I need a photographer for? I can just do this in my camera. So there are lots of, interesting, advantages to that. And I guess, part of it is that you have to adapt to the fact that, he was a real craftsman, and realize, okay, people are not looking for that level of craft, so you really have to adapt, but I think that what I liked about, reading about your career is that, you went in a lot of different places. You got a lot of different perspectives, and that's something that I felt in being in the newspaper business, that there are a number of, it used to be when in the old days, whenever those were, when you became a reporter, you came in from lots of different aspects, different previous careers, and you sort of stumbled in there. Whereas then it became professionalized, but then people sort of stayed in that, in that role, and they didn't get different perspectives. And I think that's an important thing, even as a reporter, even if you're doing it from that perspective. I remember doing before in my eclectic career, I would, I spent some time outside journalism and in institutions like you did. And then I got a sense of, to your point before about asking the right questions, I would sometimes, then I'd see from the other side of reporters talking to institutions like, guys aren't even asking the right questions. It's hard to know what these are if you're not in these institutions. So I think that's one of the things that I learned, that you really need to change perspectives to get a sense of things you can't see from one position.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you did travel around a lot, and there are advantages and disadvantages to that. Again, one of the things about that I observe a lot, even though I've moved around some, but have been fairly stable situated for a number of years. But so part of it is, we are moving Americans. That's what we do. So what are the losses in doing that? I mean, I know that you felt that there was, you moved around a lot, but what were some of the things you gained from doing that? And then you mentioned you did want something stable for your daughters, but what do you think you learned, and how did that shape your life?
Well, I found that, moving around, sixth grade, I was in 3 different schools. I mean,
Wow.
let's face it. I never had a chance to make friends, long-term friends. Okay. Because as soon as I'd make a friend, I'd get a notice, hey, we're moving next week. So all gone, start over again. And I learned to make friends fast. Okay. Meet people, but then don't get too close because you're going to be leaving very soon. It's a different way of doing it, which is why I wanted to give my girls a hometown, because now they're 35 and 40, and they have friends that they've known since they were, preteens. And it's not something I ever had a chance to do. My oldest friend is from high school. So, as a matter of fact, I got an email from him this morning, which is nice. So it's a whole different way of growing up, okay? Because so many people I know here in Ohio, Ohio, by the way, has the highest percentage of people who have never left.
Is that
the
right?
state. Yeah. And I know people who have spent their entire lives within 20 miles of where they're living right now. Okay. Now, today, they've had an opportunity to travel and get around and see the rest of the world. But I know growing up in Texas, there were an awful lot of people I met that, they'd never been out of the state. It was a shock to see what else is going on. I remember a trip when I took a couple of friends from our fraternity up to a fraternity convention from Texas to Bloomington, Indiana. And one of the girls was sitting in the back seat, and, Lubbock, Texas is out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And it's the nearest hill is 300 miles away. Let's face it. And one of the girls was sitting in the back seat, and she spent most of the day there. And then late in the day, she looked up and looked out the window and said, "Oh my God, look at all this stuff." It was a total shock to her that there was actually something to look at.
Yeah. I think that, so I'm on Long Island in New York. And one might think, well, you're in a highly mobile state. People get around. They diverse lives and different experiences. They're New Yorkers. But in fact, I find that it's pretty much the same in the sense that where I am, there are lots of little communities, and people are interestingly parochial. They really don't move around that much, even though they can go into I know people who live, not that far, within an hour of New York City, and you ask them when was the last time you were in Manhattan, they're like, I don't go to Manhattan. And you're like, really? Oh, one of the cultural capitals, and you rarely go. Well, people, there's this interesting balance in life, an interesting, desire for real roots and stability. And it's easy to get really sedentary, which is, in spite of our mobile society, it's interesting that we still are kind of homebodies.
That's very true. And I find that I haven't traveled all that much in the last few years, just because I've got other things going on.
Right.
I'm busy, and Prior to that, I visited all the 49 states on the continent. Okay. I've been to all of them and written in a bunch of them, on assignments and all. And I thoroughly enjoyed traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say that just about every place I've lived, I enjoyed living there. I've lived in California. I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in New Mexico. I've lived in Pennsylvania, Georgia, all over Texas, Ohio, Virginia, and hey, I've liked them all.
I want to pick up on that in terms of, some of your observations on traveling around. We are going to take a quick break, though, Bill. So, folks, we're coming up to a short break, but when we come back, we'll have much more to talk about with Bill Williams, and we'll get into his thought for their day and his book and a lot of more of his experiences. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Are you caring for an aging loved one? It can feel overwhelming, but you don't have to do it alone. Ron's book, The Caregiving Navigator, is a step-by-step guide designed to help you plan, prepare, and provide compassionate care with confidence. From organizing family conversations to navigating long-term care and finding support for yourself, the caregiver, it's all here. Find The Caregiving Navigator now on Amazon and take the first step toward peace of mind.
Welcome back to 45 Forward, folks. We're talking today with Bill Williams, the producer of Thought for the Day email and the author of 20 Years of Internet Humor and some other interesting things. Well, we'll be talking about some of those aspects in a minute or so, but I just wanted to cap our previous conversation because I think that, one of the things you've mentioned to me previously is this, in terms of making these changes in life, that you really needed to learn, as you put it, to roll with the punches.
As a matter of fact, the reason I started the Thought for the Day was change. Okay, it was in the 1990s. We had this new thing called the internet. What's that? How's that working? My God, email came along, and I was managing a group of sales folks in the Midwest. And I made sure they all had a laptop and they all had email, but nobody ever read it because what's out there? There's nothing there. So that's how I started doing a Thought for the Day. I'd send out something interesting for them. And they started reading their emails, which was what I was looking for.
Right.
And then they started sharing it with their clients. And the client said, hey, that's really good. Could I get on that list too? No postage, so why not add somebody to it?
Yeah.
30 years later, as you mentioned, I'm still sending it out. And I've got people all over the country. 90% of them I've never met. I've got people in Europe. I've got people in Australia that are getting this thing. And the list changes on a daily basis because people say, you put me on, and then people drop off and all that sort of thing. So I never know who all's getting it, but hey, I enjoy putting it out.
Right.
And the book is 20 years of internet humor instead of 30.
Okay.
Because let's face it, the computers back in the 1990s were not nearly as good as they are now. And frankly, for the first bunch of years, I never gave a thought to saving what I was sending out. So when I finally said, hey, I need to be, doing this, I didn't really start it till 2005. So I've got most of the things from 2005 on up till today.
Okay.
So, hey, there's 20 years. That makes a good number. So we'll use that for a title.
So you started this thing as basically a way to connect with your sales force. So what was some of your thoughts about Thought for a Day? Like, what did you want to put in there?
When I first started it, I had a couple of books on my desk of, quotations from famous people and that sort of stuff, and a joke or two. And I was doing it myself. And it was not a daily thing because it just hadn't developed the habit yet,
right.
But it was frequent. Then as people started listening to it, reading it, people started sending me material. Said, hey, why don't you try this? Or why don't you use that? And it got to the point where today I'm more of an editor than a creator because I have stuff that are literally 20 years old that I just haven't gotten around to editing yet.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
as a matter of fact, this past weekend, I went into a couple of those and said, hey, these are really good. I'm sorry I missed them.
They're vintage
Yes.
emails.
Well, they're vintage, but they're also good and mostly timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get the book actually not only gives you the title of what it is, a title I made up based upon the content,
Mm-hmm.
tells who submitted it to me,
Mm-hmm.
who originated it, and it tells when I first used it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that, hey, this isn't from yesterday. This
Right.
is from, 2006. Okay.
Right. Right.
And that helps put these things into perspective.
Right.
Okay. Because some of it's political and it talks about who's in the White House. But
Mm-hmm.
I can almost guarantee it's not who's in the White House today. It was who's in the White House back then.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess it gives you a sense of perspective too. People go like, oh, that's interesting. It may seem contemporary, but it's timeless in some ways. Have you seen any kinds of patterns or trends in what people like most, or what they, what some of your favorites have been in terms of?
I have so many favorites, but yes, one of the things that I have seen that I almost never saw in the early days was memes.
Yeah.
These little one box thought, which is great. And frankly, I find myself now sending out, lists of memes 2 or 3 days a week, simply because so many people send me these things. And they are so good for the most part. Because like I say, I'm an editor and there's a lot of stuff that I'll pull out before it, sees the light of day. But that is a big difference because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we never saw those things. So that's different. But then, I've got some favorite things. Like the one from 2010 was called The New Teacher. That was a popular one. It was about a former Marine Corps sergeant who took a new job as a school teacher. However, before the school year started, he injured his back and was required to wear a plaster cast all over the upper part of his body. Now, fortunately, it fit him so that his shirt went over it and nobody really noticed the cast. On the first day of school, he found himself assigned to the toughest kids in the school. They knew he was a Marine and they wanted to see how this guy was really going to handle him. They put the most disruptive students they had in this class, and they were really watching what he did. Well, he walked into the classroom the very first day, a new teacher, and he opened a window in the school. We didn't have air conditioner back then, let's face it. And sat down at his desk, and a breeze came in and blew a bunch of papers around and blew his tie up. Okay. And he simply reached over, grabbed a stapler, and stapled his tie to his chest. Didn't have any trouble for the rest of the year.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So was that one of yours? That was a submission from someone?
That was a submission from a college friend named Julius Graw. Julius retired as a Navy captain. We were both in school together. I had tried to get into the Air Force through Air Force ROTC, and they didn't like me because I couldn't see well enough. So I never did get into the Air Force. But Julius got into the Navy, kicking and screaming. But he thought he was just going to go for a quick term and be gone, but he made it a career. So he had been planning to make a career in broadcasting, and I'd been planning to make a career in the military. So we traded careers.
Okay. So I liked her one. Let's see. I think this was just about, it says 7-Eleven. So I'm on your list. So I get them.
Yep.
I enjoy them. So I one of the recent ones you sent me was, "Can you fix this?" Which is, I guess this is a true story, right? About
I wouldn't hold my breath, but
okay,
it could be.
It could be. UPS pilots filling out forms called gripe sheets, and
yes, that one is supposedly true.
So the gripe sheets tell mechanics about problems with the aircraft. The mechanics correct the problems, document the repairs on the form. Then the pilots review the gripe sheets before the next flight. Never let it be said the ground crews lack a sense of humor. So here are some actual maintenance complaints, and here are some of their responses. So I love some of them. It's a tough thing, but you need to be ready for it. You need to adapt to it. You need to roll with those punches
and laugh at it. Okay.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So you collected these things and they put it together in the book. And let's talk a little bit about the book. So when did it come out?
It came out the first of the year. Technically, it came out in December 14th, I think, was the official publication date. Which was a surprise to me because I wasn't expecting it until the middle or end of January. So I was delighted to have gotten it in 2024.
Yeah. Nice. How long did it take you to put it together?
20 years.
Oh, okay, right there you go.
No, actually, when I sat down and decided I wanted to do it, it was, maybe a couple weeks. I was just picking the ones I wanted to do and cleaning them up and putting together an introduction and, deciding, this is what I want to do.
Right.
One of the things that I have found in comments is the fact that it's too big. There's too many pages.
Oh.
For a humor book, they say it should be half that size. So volume 2 will probably be half that size.
The need of people today is humor. So I'm not sure about that. We'll have to see how your sales go. I would, it seems like too much humor ain't enough from my experience. Yeah. So you sell it basically online, or can people buy it in stores as well?
Well, it's basically online, but
Okay.
it's available through Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and most of the major bookstores, Goodreads and all that sort of stuff. But very often people just order it from the bookstore and have it shipped to them, or order an ebook copy from the bookstore or wherever they'd like to get it. Amazon, obviously, is the big dealer.
Right. Well, it's interesting, so I do find that, as we get older and there's increased longevity, that more people like you and me are coming out with books later in life. It's just like, it's an accumulation of life, and it's not really a memoir, but it is an accumulation of experiences, and we can keep doing it. So
Never thought of calling this a memoir, but I guess it could be a memoir. Because memoirs are the biggest selling category, so maybe I ought to change my category.
Well, that's a good point. Maybe, it's a different kind of memoir, but it is, I helped an attorney friend of mine put out his memoir, so to speak. What we did with him is that he said, what, it really isn't so much my life that's interesting, but the people, the clients I represented were interesting. So it's really a memoir through his clients, and his experiences with his clients. And he had some pretty prominent clients, so it made it worthwhile to read about it, and sort of the inside story. Nothing, untoward, but just interesting details about their lives and his assisting with them, so that to fulfill their needs. But they're interesting details, from people like Joy, who's this person who came out with the Swiffer, who now there's a Broadway play about her, to he represented Solzhenitsyn. And so he had plenty of books about him, but not sort of the inside story. So you can, telling your life through, your relationships with other people is an interesting perspective. And through, so I think that, I think you should put it in the memoir category is the bottom line. Oh gosh. So you did the book, and you keep doing these thoughts for the day, but you've done a lot of other interesting projects. So, we'll talk a little bit more about them. I want to at least sneak in one before the break. And that is some of your, unusual projects over the year and through your consulting. And, one of the stories I liked that you told before was, doing PSAs for the Postal Service, which I thought was interesting. So tell us that story.
Well, the Postal Service was one of my biggest clients for years. And one of the things that back in the early 70s, Whenever they came out with a new commemorative stamp, there'd be a big promotion on it, and TV spots would be run on it. So
Right.
the collectors would buy them, not use them. Okay. And they came asked me to do one. I guess the first one I did was on the Robert Frost stamp. Okay.
Oh, okay.
They said, "Can you think of a way that we could get more play on this thing?" And I said, "Yeah, make it longer." Okay. Seriously, because back then PSAs were typically 30 seconds. Okay. Public service announcements, PSAs. Some were even 15 seconds. And I said, let's do a 90-second one. Okay. And the reason I said that was because I'd worked in TV stations. Whenever they would need to run public service announcements, they'd come in on film. And the people back in the telecine or the film room would have to splice these things together.
Right.
And would you rather splice four together or maybe two? So I figured if we had a long one, they'd probably run that one a whole bunch more than they would 3 30-second ones. And it worked. And that got better play than anything they'd done in years, simply because it was longer. Okay. And they could get 90 seconds worth of public service time without much less effort.
Right. So sometimes longer is better. I mean, now we're going in the opposite direction, seems to me, but sometimes they're so short that I can hardly focus on any of these things. And it's just like, image. And I think it's,
that is before, something I was far before that time.
Yeah.
Let's do nice, easy things going smoothly and go from one to another. And I haven't done a TV spot in 40 years. Okay. And I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all.
Well, we're going to come back and I just want to pick up a couple more points about that. But when we come back, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, though, don't go anywhere. We have a lot more to talk about with Bill Williams, the author of 20 Years of Internet Humor and some other interesting things. So come right back.
Do you like what you're hearing? Well, we've got plenty more where that came from. Head over to 45forward.org, where you'll find a full archive of over 200 episodes of the 45 Forward podcast, all hosted by Ron. Each week, Ron talks with fascinating guests, experts, advocates, and everyday folks, sharing insights and stories to help you live a better, fuller life in your second half. We cover everything from health and caregiving to careers, relationships, and finding purpose, whatever helps you move forward with clarity and confidence. That's 45forward.org. Check it out and keep moving forward. 45 Forward.
Welcome back to 45 Forward, folks. This is Ron Roel, your host. We're talking today with Bill Williams, the producer of Thought for the Day, email, and author of 20 Years of Internet Humor and some other interesting things. Before the break, we were talking about some of Bill's projects. Besides his writing, he had a lot of different projects as a communications consultant. We were talking about the Postal Service and his PSAs, but he had some other interesting experiences with the Postal Service, specifically about stamps. So talk about that, Bill.
Yeah, they came to me and said, do you have any ideas what we could do to increase the number of stamp collectors? And I said, yeah, it'd be real simple. Let's start getting people collecting stamps when they're young. Start in school. So we came up with the idea of starting stamp clubs throughout schools around the country. We called it the Benjamin Franklin Stamp Club. And what we did to make it useful was to create a teaching kit for teachers, which included posters about stamps, which included teaching material about stamps, which included a lot of additional material, film strips, okay? A whole series of film strips. And what we put this together in a nice package, and they said, well, why don't we sell it? And I said, yeah, I think we could. It ought to be about $10, $12. They said, no, let's sell it for $5. They said, well, that's really below your cost. And they said, yeah, but we want to get a few people to use it. So the idea was to sell it for $5 so the teachers would just buy it out of their pocket and not submit purchase order.
Oh, okay.
So they then sent out a great publicity thing to teachers all over the country. And they gave me a goal: if I could sell 1,500 of these things, it would be considered a great success. It was a disaster because we sold 20,000. And 99% of them got purchased on purchase orders.
Wow.
Which made a huge problem for the post office, which drove the cost up so much that they were losing money on every one of them.
Oh,
They
boy.
canceled the whole project after the first. It was supposed to be four different series, but they canceled the whole project after the first one because it just cost them too much money.
Wow.
So killed by success.
Killed by success. Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting that, sometimes they just don't, it's like value the product for what it really is. People would have paid more.
But the schools would pay more,
Mm.
but they didn't want to go through the hassle of having
Right.
the schools order them. But then they also weren't really thinking in terms of commercial, because let's face it, they never had to make a
Right.
profit. Okay.
Right.
And so that just wasn't part of their mindset. And they
Mhm.
weren't thinking that way.
Yeah. Well, they probably would be more thinking about that today.
Well, I'm sure they
But-
would.
Yeah.
But, since they canceled it, what I then turned around and did was set up my own series of things, American History on Stamps. Okay. And set that up as did a whole series of 4 or 8, I don't even remember now, different film strips. And that film strip series won a bunch of awards for best educational programs. And I sold a ton of those, and
Wow.
I definitely charged enough to make a profit on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you do that is sometimes the problem with you need some sort of profit motive. You need some sort of, entrepreneurial incentives behind something. So it's a shame. I think that they're, now that they're in trouble, let's say, with competition and with costs, they really need a little bit more of that, and I'm not sure that selling SpongeBob SquarePants stamps will bail them out, but who knows? I don't know.
Working for the government was a whole different world. Okay.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. Yeah, it's about some of those things.
I had a contract from one of the government agencies.
Mhm.
They had developed a new piece of equipment, and it was being built in Downingtown, Pennsylvania at Burroughs.
Okay.
And it wasn't working. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. It was not working. So I got a contract to send a film crew up to do mechanical film on what is the problem. So high-speed stuff that, so we could see where the problems were and getting it back. And I got back to Washington, and there was somebody standing on my door. I'm from the Postal Service. I want to see your film.
Hmm.
I said, it's still in the can. We haven't processed it yet. I mean, well, as soon as you get it done, I want to see it right now. So we got it processed, got it printed, called him in, and he looked at it and said, this is terrible. I said, what do you mean? He says, it's not working. And I said, that was what we're supposed to show you. What's not working. He said, you don't understand. We want to use this film as a promotion to show what a great device this is. So I got a second contract to send a film crew back to the same place to photograph the same machine, but this time behind the scenes, I had people pulling strings and making it work.
Oh, man.
So it wasn't bad for me, but the taxpayer got stuck for,
Wow.
a bunch of money on that one.
Yeah. Phew. So what are some of I know you did a number of other projects for government agencies. What were some of the other ones?
Well, one was near and dear to my heart was a series of television spots on lead-based paint prevention.
Oh.
Because this was, again, back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent us down to a school in New Orleans. It was being renovated so that we could photograph how they were getting the paint out of the school. But a great reason for getting a PSA out there to show the dangers of lead-based paint. And people say, well, hey, it's paint. Well, the problem that people don't realize, particularly in schools, is that lead-based paint flakes off. And lead-based paint tastes good.
Oh.
And kids were eating these paint flakes and getting lead poisoning. Which is why you don't find lead-based paint anymore. Certainly not in school.
Right. Yeah. Well, I didn't know that aspect, that it actually tastes good. That's interesting. Huh. All right. Need a deterrent for that. All right. Okay. So let's just switch a little bit to you're visiting 49 out of 50 states. So you're really of the United States. What are some of your memories about some of the parts of the country you didn't expect, you were surprised by, or some of the favorite ones, or some of the experiences that you glad you had or didn't expect?
I like the desert.
Okay.
Big growing out in West Texas. It's not desert, but as you go a little bit further west, it definitely is. And one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen is Death Valley. Okay. Hottest place in the U.S. But occasionally it rains. If you're fortunate enough to get there after a rain, the entire desert is in bloom. Because nothing grows there, but if water comes, you can see these miles and miles of flower. Just absolutely beautiful. I did a lot of work for the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration. And back in the late 70s, there were some major floods down in Arizona. I got this call seeing if I would be available to go and do a job for them, because I was a freelancer. Okay, I was handled their public relations on a contract basis.
Right.
And they said, there's been some flooding in Phoenix, and we'd like for you to go down there. And I said, you're joking, right? Phoenix flooding? And they said, yeah, definitely a major problem, because there's a Salt River going through town. There were 27 bridges across the Salt River, and only 3 were left.
Wow.
And the flooding was caused not so much by rain in Phoenix, but by rain in the mountains, because the rain in the mountains overfilled the reservoirs, and they had to release water from the reservoirs to keep the dams from breaking. And so this water came flooding down through Phoenix and caused flooding in Phoenix.
Wow.
On top of that, they said, we don't know how you're going to get there for sure, because last we heard the airport was 2/3 underwater.
Jeez.
And furthermore, we don't know who you're going to be talking to. I said, well, I go in and report to the governor. They said, that's the problem. We don't know who the governor is. I said, well, what? Tell me. They said, well, the governor flew across the area to see if, in fact, this was a disaster. He got back to the office, requested a disaster declaration, and died. He had been the lieutenant governor, because the original governor had been assigned as ambassador to Argentina. And frankly, we don't know right now who the new governor is going to be. We haven't done the research. So I got out to Arizona and went up to the governor's office, went up in the elevator in the lobby. I was talking with one of the guys in there. And we got up to the governor's floor, and he went into the governor's office. Turns out he was the new governor. He went up on the public elevator because he didn't know where his private elevator was.
Wow.
But the most interesting part of that particular thing is the fact that, if you can remember that back in the news that long ago, there was a lot of news stories about Operation Mudhole, where we had the Army helicopters flying hay and all out to cattle on the Navajo Indian Reservation, because it was so muddy as a result of all this rain they couldn't get out to their cattle.
Wow.
So the Army was helping them with that. And somebody asked, well, what about the Hopis? I said, we haven't heard from the Hopis. I said, well, they have some problems too. So I made arrangements to take a helicopter up and to the Hopi Reservation, which is just east of the Navajo Reservation. Actually, it's surrounded by the Navajo Reservation, and met with the tribal chairman. And he took me on a tour of the Hopi Reservation, and they did, in fact, have major problems because the Hopis, their whole tribe is up on a series of 3 mesas that are about 700 feet above the normal ground level. And they've been there for over 1,000 years. And they have basically all these homes built out of adobe, which is dried mud. And what happens when a lot of rain hits dried mud? It melts, right? So these houses basically had melted. And they needed help getting rebuilt. And so I offered to give them help, and they said, we don't want it. I said, I beg your pardon? They said, whenever we've asked for help on something like this, HUD has come in and said, you have to build the houses according to HUD specification.
Yeah, wow.
And he said, if you look down there, there's a village down there. It's all nice houses. Nobody lives there. Those are all HUD houses that we've had to build in the past. But none of our people want to live there. They want to be up here with our rest of the tribe. So we don't want it. So we came up with an idea that instead of giving them money through HUD, we got the money through State Department as aid to a foreign nation.
Oh, wow.
So HUD wasn't involved.
Right.
And I asked the chairman, I said, once you get started, I'd love to come out and take pictures and document your recovery. He said, no, if that's part of the deal, keep your money. We don't want it. And I said, okay, that's not part of the deal because we need to get this fixed.
Right.
And so, about 3 or 4 weeks later, I was back in Washington, and I got a call from the tribal chairman. He said, Mr. Williams, if you had said you'd like to take some pictures. If you'd still like to take some pictures, we'd love to have you.
Oh, right.
And so I said, I can be there in 2 or 3 days. He said, you'll be our guest. So I came out and spent a week with the Hopis. I learned I was the first white man ever allowed to photograph on the reservation. Learned a lot about the Hopis, met a tremendous number of really great people. And before I left, I asked the chairman, I said, why did you change your mind?
Right.
And he said, well, in the entire history of our tribe, this is the first time the white man has ever made a promise to it and kept it.
Oh. Yes, there have been a lot of broken promises over the years, treaty after treaty after treaty. But so you're a remarkable exception to that. So kudos to you.
Definitely made me feel good.
Yeah. So we're going to just take another quick break and we'll have a wrap up, Bill. So folks, don't go away. We have one more good section coming up with Bill Williams, the producer of Thought for a Day. So don't go anywhere.
Caring for a loved one can feel overwhelming. That's why we created CaregivingNav.com, your personal guide through the complex world of caregiving. It's a free interactive website built around the Caregiving Navigator book, with tools designed to make your journey easier. Whether you're planning ahead, managing care right now, or navigating a crisis, you'll find step-by-step advice, trusted resources, and over a dozen downloadable checklists. From legal planning to home safety. From medical decisions to emotional support, it's all here, all in one place. Just visit caregivingnav.com. Because you're not alone on this path, and the help you need is just a click away.
Welcome back, folks, to 45 Forward. I'm Ron Roel, your host. Again, we're talking with Bill Williams, producer of Thought for a Day, and numerous other things of interest, which we've been talking about over the course of the last hour. So Bill was mentioning an interesting story about his experience with the Hopi Native Americans. And during the break, you mentioned another story that is interesting. There are a couple more stories I'd like to sneak in, but tell this one, Bill, about comes out of your instructional film experience.
Well, I had a contract to go for a government agency to go to Richmond, Virginia, to shoot a piece of equipment that apparently is used all over the country, but almost no place was it set up properly. We had to go to Richmond because that was the one place they could locate that it was all set up properly. So we're down there filming and how it works and all that sort of stuff. And one of the old timers came over and said, "What you doing?" And I said, "Well, we're shooting this instructional film on the equipment on how to set it up properly." And he says, "Yeah, but why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, they need a training program to teach people how to do it right." He said, "But why are you doing it?" "Because they're taking it out of operation nationwide in the next 90 days.
Arrested Development. Okay. Yeah. So this is there are lots of experience like this, but some of them are better than others. I know. So you travel a lot, and I seem to recall that you did a film about the impact of America on Poland. Is that right? This was, yeah. So that's an interesting.
That was an absolutely delightful project, which I never saw the results of. Okay. I had a contract to provide script and photography for a film on the effect of America on life in Poland during the bicentennial. This was for the bicentennial. And I had myself and two other people, the writer and an assistant, and we flew over to Poland and spent some absolutely delightful time visiting Warsaw and all over the country. We photographed at Chopin's birthplace. We photographed at the biggest steel mill in Europe, which is in Warsaw, or in Krakow. We photographed at a Fiat manufacturing plant. We photographed all over the place. And one of the ones with the Chopin's birthplace, which was so much fun, was the fact that I talked to my guide and translator, and I said, "Terry, would you see if you could go out and find some people that could just walk through the picture? Just, they won't say anything. I just need to see some people walking through."
Right.
And so he came back and said, "I think you'll like this people." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I'll let them introduce themselves to you." It turned out to be the Muskingum College basketball team from Muskingum, Ohio.
Back to your hometown or home state. Yeah.
Not at the time. But, yeah, it was fun. Did have to admit that we visited Auschwitz. That was one of the most draining thing I've ever done. I could not make it all the way through. It was just so impactful. But we visited and photographed the largest steel plant in Europe. And the manager came over and asked us, "Now, there's two lines here. Please only photograph the one on the right. Do not photograph anything on the left." So we did. Turned out, as looking at the labels on the thing, this was made by Abby Etna from Perrysburg, Ohio, which is where I live now. This was back in 1973. And when we were done, I asked him, I said, "Why did you not want us to show the one on the left?" He said, "Well, the two lines, the one on the right, the one you photographed, was given to us by the United States, and it runs perfectly. The one on the left was given to us by the Soviet Union, and we have never been able to get it to run."
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah. So this was a film for the bicentennial, was that right?
It was for the bicentennial, but it was also for Europe.
Okay.
I mean, for Poland. And the reason I say I never saw it was that we turned over the film, we turned over the script to the company that hired us, and I never heard another word from them. Got paid, but I never saw the end results or anything. I've got some great still photos that I took. But I don't even know if the film was ever completed and released.
Was it part of a larger project to show the impact? You said the impact of America on Poland, but it seems to me it's almost the reverse about, what the influences of other cultures, in interaction with the U.S. I don't know. Just
It was long enough ago to where I couldn't even tell you who the contract was with at this point. It was just one of my favorite projects, but unfortunately I don't have anything to show for it except some still pictures.
interesting memories.
Very many.
Yeah. So, in wrapping up, Bill, so you've had a lot of experiences. What's some of the takeaways, for you personally, in terms of what you learned along the way, things that you expected or didn't expect, sort of the lessons learned and unexpected experiences and accidents that turned into real, real insights about both yourself and the life around you.
Boy, that's a tough question,
Mm-hmm.
Ron. One of the things that I did, I mentioned I'd worked for the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That later became FEMA.
Right.
I was the Director of News and Information for FEMA for the first year of that organization.
Okay.
And one of the things I learned was that I enjoyed working in that business more than anything I've ever done in my life.
Interesting.
Given the opportunity, I would have never left. Unfortunately, I was a member of the wrong political party when the election came in, and gee whiz, get the hell out of here because
Mm-hmm.
we want to put our people in.
Right.
But it's the thing where we could go into any place in the country and people were welcoming us, okay, because we could help them when they really, really needed help, which is why it has torn my heart out to see the current administration get rid of FEMA and say, well, we don't need that anymore. Because that has done more good than any other organization I can think of, except maybe the American Red Cross. And the Red Cross was part of, all the FEMA efforts that they did anywhere.
Right. Well, that's interesting. That's a shame. I mean, you can criticize it, but, I think that clearly when there are disasters, people don't care about partisanship. They need help.
Well, and another thing about it is the fact that the vast majority of the FEMA people who go out to those things are not regular government employees. They're freelancers like I was.
Mm-hmm.
They're called WAEs, while actually employed. They get no benefits, no nothing, just an hourly wage.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it because they like to do it. They want to do it. And they can go out and, spend, as for Hurricane Frederick, I was down in Alabama for 3 months.
Wow.
Okay. And these other people do it. And I met people all over the country because they all get together for the big disasters.
Right.
And we see them periodically over the years at different places.
Mm-hmm.
And they're there because they like to help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah.
There's no more there now.
Right. Okay. So, I know in previous conversations you had some thoughts that I liked about advice to younger people about. I mean, you tried a lot of things. What's some of your advice to people about trying things?
Try it. Okay.
Try it. Okay.
Try it. You'll like it. Okay. That was what the commercial many years ago. Try it. You'll like it.
Right.
And if you don't like it, try something else.
Mm-hmm.
People have asked me, gee whiz, you've written for film, you've written for TV, you've written for magazines, you've written everything.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell a writer that wanted to do it all? I'd say, don't try to do it all. Do something, do it well. Mm-hmm. Once you've done something well, try something else. If you like it, try it. But, keep it up. But don't try to do everything because you won't you won't be successful in any of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I'm sure you're still learning. What lessons do you think you're still learning in life? Anything except to keep trying things?
20 Years of Internet Humor is my first book.
Okay.
I've written for 60 years, but I've never written a book before. And I thought I knew about publishing. And I discovered I was a total and complete novice. I've made so many mistakes with this. I can't believe how badly I've screwed it up in some ways. But I'm learning, okay? It's just like I would advise somebody, try it till you get better at it. But I've discovered that it's not your father's publishing world. I mean, things are not at all like they were 5, 10, 15, certainly 20 years ago.
Well, I'm glad you did, Bill. And to that point, I published a book recently, again, it's a caregiving guide for families called the Caregiving Navigator. And I think the lesson is that I tried it. And the most important thing is I finished it. I did it. And you're always going to make mistakes. But the point is finish something and try something else. And, it's not, you can always revise it. You can always make a better book. And so I think people, get so worried about it not being perfect. That old saying, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And so I'm glad you did it. And so once again, I want to, tell people, how they can get it. I guess they can get it on your website, right? What is your website?
My website is www.internet-humor.com.
Okay.
And no, they can't get the book there, but they'll tell them to go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Books a Million. You can get them any place like that, Goodreads. But my email, if somebody would like to get my thought for the day, is bill at internet-humor.com.
Okay.
Or if
good.
they go to the website, they can sign up there for it.
Nice. Okay. Good. Well, Bill, it's been a very fun, enjoyable conversation with you. I'm really
It's been
glad.
delightful to be with you. I've got to say you're a great podcaster, interviewer.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's always it makes it easy when I have someone who's as engaging as you. So I want to thank you for a thoughtful show with lots of interesting stories. Again, folks, thank you for spending time with me and Bill and learning how we can make our journey through the second half of life even better than the first. And certainly, Bill has many. You've got about 3 or 4 halves you built into the second half. So it's great in spending this time with you. Folks, if you want to see an archive of all my shows, go to 45forward.org and you can see a whole listing of all my shows. You want to send me comments or questions or suggestions, you can email me at ron.roel@gmail.com. And you can also, if you email me, I can sign you up for my monthly newsletter. You can get a sense of what my upcoming shows are. So thanks again, Bill. And folks, until my next episode next week, keep moving forward, 45 forward.